And now, introducing a man who gave me every opportunity to make a name for myself in Baltimore sports. A man who I will forever be grateful to, a man who I'm proud to call my friend. He is Glenn Clark.
That's very sweet. We need more me for sure. Definitely need more me. Probably the gain. Yeah, let's bring that up. Let's bring the... Yeah, hello, good morning. It's Glenn Clark Radio. Maybe not that much me. Maybe we went a little too far. I don't know. We'll check. We'll be all right. Very sweet of Paul. It's Paul's final day. We're getting things worked out. There you can have those headphones, and you can work from there. Friday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. Today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel. 61 self-service kiosks in the FanDuel Sportsbook for you to get your bets in, and they're open 24/7. So no matter what it is that you're betting on, you can bet it in the FanDuel Sportsbook. And, of course, all the big events that are coming up, PGA Championship, the rest of the weekend, all the NHL and NBA playoffs, as well as the Indianapolis 500, the Lacrosse Championship, whatever it is, you want to reserve your spot right now. The Rolando Romero, Gervonta Davis fight, UEFA Champions League final. Reserve your spot for all of these events by emailing events@sportssocialmd.com. Coming up on the program today, in a few minutes, we're going to go to Norfolk. Pete Michaud is the play-by-play voice of the Norfolk Tides. He's been watching Adley Rutschman, who's still not a Baltimore Oriole. We'll talk about it. He's also, of course, seen Grayson Rodriguez and others, so we'll talk about everything that Pete Michaud has seen this season at Norfolk. Later on in the morning, we will check in with our friend Donna Brothers, who didn't even get to do the post-race interview at the Kentucky Derby because Rich Strike was acting up a bit. We will check in with Donna Brothers ahead of Preakness tomorrow. And later on in the program, my buddy Gregg Rosenthal will join us. Of course, Greg from around the NFL, NFL Network, NFL.com, and also you hear him as part of the wildly popular Courts of Thunder podcast, which is back. The French Open preview episode is available right now. We'll talk to him, I guess, a little bit about football, though I don't even know what people care about in football right now. So we'll talk far more about the French Open, which gets underway on Sunday. I don't know what happened. I got a little bit of a tickle in my throat today. I don't know what's going on there. I got it's weird. It doesn't feel like allergies. Like, it feels different. It feels more like my throat hasn't woken up yet this morning. Like, it just hasn't come and joined me to do the show. Like, it's like my brain's here, my body's here, my throat's just sort of sitting back in bed like, it's a Friday. We don't really feel like being here today.
A little bit of a Phoebe Buffet when she had a cold. My stinky shit.
Yeah, but it's not even that. It's like I'm strained to talk.
Oh, it hurts.
It doesn't. It's not pain. I have to put in more effort.
You think your mind is trying to save your voice for Preakness tomorrow?
So no.
When you're screaming at the horses?
No,
exactly
not at all.
He's just choked up because it's my last
Yeah,
record.
that's probably what it is, Paul. It's a good point. It's Griffin, of course, who will be taking over on Monday. When I'm saying we needed more of me, it might not be Griffin's fault. It might have been my own fault. Like, I feel like I'm having to put in more effort for less voice today, and I don't know how to explain that, and I don't much care for it. It might be related. We've got a problem going on in my house. For those of you, Paul, you and Mrs. Valley are thinking about starting a family at some point, correct?
We're taking the first step towards that. We're going to have a puppy today.
There you go. What I tell you, it's glorious. Everything about it is glorious. For example, right now, we have to monitor our 4-year-old's poop.
Oh, nice.
Every time he poops, we have to chart what it looks like. And I mean, we have to take a picture to chart what his poop looks like because he's been having a couple of gastrointestinal issues of late. So anytime somebody says, what's it like being a father? Oh, it's glorious. I'll tell you, there is nothing better. I know so much about poop. I have learned so incredibly much about the differences in what poop looks like over the last couple of days. I got to tell you, I'm starting to worry about my own poop. I might start checking my own, being like, hey, maybe I got some problems here. I didn't get as much because of that. I'm running a little bit behind. We also last night was kickball night, and I got to tell you, We play in the low level of the kickball league because we're old. We're some old Fs playing in the kickball league. I don't know how the team that we were playing against, I'm pretty sure, was Arsenal. I'm reasonably certain that we were taking on Everton in the kickball league last night. And our friend Gabby from WBAL, Gabby DePaula, was on the other team. And I saw her, and I'm like, wait, you guys are good, aren't you? And she's like, yeah, we're good. We haven't lost yet. I'm like, oh, F. Like, oh, F. You saw the score last night of the I don't know, it was getting some traction on Twitter. Indiana and Iowa played a baseball game yesterday. The final score was 30-16.
Oh, wow.
I'm not kidding about that. That was the actual final score.
Are we sure it wasn't
of the
spring football?
No, I'm certain it was the final score of the Iowa-Indiana baseball game, and I don't think our kickball match last night was as close as that. I'm pretty sure it was more like 37-5 or something along those lines.
How are you as a kickballer?
I'm very good. So a lot of, like on kickball, naturally, a lot of dudes will just go up there and try to kick the crap out of the ball, kick it as far as they can. That leads to a lot of flyouts, a lot of that going on. So I don't even attempt to kick the ball as far as I can. I simply attempt to drive it into the ground towards the hole between shortstop and third, or if they're trying to cover that, more towards the middle, depending if there's a runner on base. I am an on-base guy. I am Kevin Youkilis, if you will.
No, you're the Tony Gwynn of kickball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm better. Let's just be honest about that. I'm better. So I went 3 for 3 last night. Like, I was fine, but we didn't need singles hitters last night. We needed some extra base hits to be mixed in, and I'm just not that guy. That's not my jam. And one of them, Gabby was pitching, and she literally turned to her middle infielders, and she's like, hey, you're leaving a huge hole up the middle. And I was like, oh, they are, because they didn't move. I was like, I'm going to try to kick it right there. So I did, but I got under it a little bit, attempting to kick it right there. And so it was hanging in the air, and I'm like, oh, crap. And then I realized, like, the hole was even there was nobody coming to get that ball. They played me so far back. They clearly did not get the memo that I am not swinging for a home run. They played me so far back that it was a pop-up that just hung in the air for forever and dropped easily because there was nobody coming to get it. So I screwed that one up. You could almost say it was like that. Paul's preposterous prop did not hit. Close.
Did win.
They did win. And there was a walk-off homer in the 9th inning, but it was not for Austin Hayes. He went homerless.
And hitless.
Well, that wouldn't have helped you in any way. Him getting a hit would not have helped you whatsoever in your prop.
I did not hit a single prop bet.
I'm so sorry. How many did you play?
What
do you mean? Do you mean during your run? During your run, yeah, your preposterous props.
There is one, I believe, that's the Dart World Championship.
Oh, has that not happened yet?
Or is it the Dart World Championships?
Paul, I don't remember. How would I remember? You got to keep track of these things. All right. Well, let me know. Inform me. You won't get anything for it, but a nice thumbs up, a verbal nod, if you will be about all that you will get in that scenario. Orioles did indeed win 9-6 over the Yankees, so for one final time, we allow him to tell us. After this, we just stop caring about the Orioles, frankly. There just will be no Orioles coverage whatsoever on this show. One final time, Paul will tell us, did something matter? We give him 60 seconds. He's our 1-minute man, Paul Valley.
It mattered that the Orioles were playing some close games ever since Austin Hayes came back, and they finally got into the win column against the Yankees, who right now have the best record in baseball. So it's no small feat to pick up a win. Back and forth game. Bruce Zimmerman, arguably his worst start of the year. He gave up 5 runs, although 2 scored when he was no longer in the game. The ERA jumped from about 2.7 to about 3.5 with that performance. But Anthony Santander, the bat's starting to heat up. He went 3 for 4, of course, with the walk-off 3-run homer last night and the 2 doubles. And also Trey Mancini had 2 hits. He's leading the American League in hitting this month, and he's second in on-base percentage. So both of those guys are heating up, and it matters because they may be your 2 trade chips. Now, you're probably not going to get a ton for them, or they could be extension candidates, more likely for Trey Mancini because they're hitting well, and no outfielders in the minor leagues are tearing the cover off the ball right now. So, and in Santander's case, he's still young. So the Orioles get a win 9-6. Really what matters is that they got back in the win column, and they could be getting hot at the right time.
They've won 1 game. I don't know about getting hot.
Well, but they've come back in each of the last 3 games. They made these games close.
Okay.
They're getting some good players back this week.
Well, I mean, that's that's fine. Look, a couple of thoughts that I have about this. One, to what you said about Mancini and Santander, it's tough. There's no trade value in Mancini. And I say there's no trade Mancini. You could take something for the sake of moving him, and again, if you've decided you're not going to keep him around, that's the argument, is just take whatever it's going to be. But there's no actual value in Trey Mancini. For anybody else, as we've said a million times, there's plenty of value here because of who Trey Mancini is. And there's the argument that you could use a clubhouse leader type for this next group of guys, and Trey Mancini could do that. Santander is interesting because he offers like a little bit more because of his arm. You mentioned, he's not young, but he's 27. I mean, like they're
still under team control.
There's a reason why somebody might say, again, there's always going to be a limit. There's going to be a limit to what it is that you can get for one of these types of guys because, for the most part, this is not what teams are missing. They don't put a premium on kind of positionless guys. Santander's a little bit less positionless only because he has a strong arm. Only because somebody would look at it and say, hey, that might be an upgrade over the guy that we would send out there because of his arm. I'm not trying to oversell that. I'm not trying to make him Vladimir Guerrero or something like that. But, there's a little something there.
He's a very good right fielder.
He's definitely a plus right fielder. There's no question about that. And specifically, somebody would say that's an oxymoron to be a plus right fielder, right? Like, it's the position that you least need coverage.
Somebody's got to play it.
I understand that, but everybody's got one. Everybody's got somebody that can play right field. The only thing that would differentiate Anthony Santander from the guy that you have playing right field is your guy might not have his arm, right? Mm-hmm. You might very well have a guy that can hit a little bit and do all the things that you want to do and can cover right field fine. But the arm could separate that a bit, whereas Trey Mancini doesn't have that, right? Like, you couldn't put him out there and say he is a plus over the guy that you have.
Right.
And Santander, you could. If he can continue to hit consistently, maybe you could get something. The argument about extending him has always been intriguing to me because it just doesn't feel like it would cost you all that much. This goes back to the what is the market thing. I don't know what the market is for Anthony Santander, and especially how many years until free agency?
He's got 2 years left of team control.
Especially if you're willing,
I think after this year,
to give him a little bit more money right now. I don't see how that's a bad thing, and particularly if what you're doing isn't really going all that long term, but instead maybe right now giving him 4 years, which gets him 2 extra years of money, only puts him into his early 30s. I don't see how that's a problem, and I can't fathom it costing you all that much. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I haven't investigated this wholly. It's not been my top priority to figure out what an Anthony Santander extension would be. The question of, is he blocking someone? The name that would come up is Stowers. No, Stowers has not hit well so far this season, but he's still very much a part of the plan to some extent. The argument would be, well, you can solve that. There's always a spot available for someone. Whether that means that someone's got to go play a little bit more first base, whether that means that someone's got to DH a little bit more, you can solve this problem somehow.
And if you were to extend him, you're not extending him for $20 million a year. At most, he's, what, a $12, $15 million player? At
460 is what came to mind for me.
Right.
460 was the number that jumped out.
If he's playing well, but then you have a guy like Stowers or Newstrom or in the future Colton Cowser knocking on the door and they're ready to come up, then that's not for a team that's looking to add to a contender.
Yeah,
I mean, not a lot of money.
They'd probably be willing to take it on, but again, you're still not going to get there's just never going to be a much. You can't change this. It's never going to be much. In fact, there'd be probably more trade value now just because of the team control than there would be after you sign into a contract. Right. Obviously, we all know what the story really is in relation to the Orioles. It's the guy who continues to not be here. Dan Connolly wrote at The Athletic that he thought today was the favorite when he wrote his piece, 2 days ago, and it almost certainly is not today. Maybe we'll all be wrong, and there'll be some surprise. Again, the insanity of that is almost overwhelming. Maybe we'll prove to be wrong, and this afternoon there'll be an announcement that Adley Rutschman is here. I don't know why that would be. That's crazy that they wouldn't take advantage of pre-promoting something like this, but I just have to point out that everything is possible until it's not possible. My reaction to a couple of things. One, in that same story from Dan Connolly in The Athletic, he says that he is to understand this has nothing to do with the Super 2 situation. And that's why he is to believe it will happen before June. But we're running out of options here for it to happen before June. Right. The options would be you do it with no fanfare tonight. You, for whatever reason, just wait and do it on Sunday. Get 1 day's worth of bang for your buck for this. Essentially, give a gift to, well, not a gift. There would be no reason to not spread it out over the course of a weekend and say, hey, here's the first time Adley Rutschman's going to be here. You can make it out for any of these 3 games. If you can't make it out on Friday, there's 2 more games Saturday and Sunday for you to make it out to see. Right. To do it on a Sunday, again, it's better than doing it on the road, but what are we doing?
The only way it makes sense is if you're calling Grayson Rodriguez up at the same time to make sense.
But that doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't. There's no reason why Adley Rutschman needs to come on the same day as Grayson Rodriguez. There's no reason why it needs to line up.
So he's caught 3 days in a row. So if he catches again tonight, then you give him Saturday off, you DH him, and then he's ready to catch again on Sunday, and then he catches.
But why couldn't he catch in Baltimore tonight? Like that. There's no. To say it makes sense, it doesn't make sense. There's no way that it makes sense.
None of it makes sense.
Anything could be done, but none of it makes sense. And we can't get around that. Like, there's nothing sensical about any of this. So, could it be on the road? Yeah, it could be on the road. I guess this is insane, but it could be on the road. If it's not, we're down to literally the last game in May as being the only opportunity for his debut to be at home if it's not this weekend. It is goofy as hell. Dan Connolly says he's to understand that Super 2 isn't a thought here. And I pray to God that's correct, because it's so much worse, the thought of beginning Adley Rutschman's tenure by fighting with him about something like this. And it also proclaims loudly, we're not going to buy this guy out of arbitration years.
Exactly.
And that's all the more frustrating for this fan base, which is desperate to see you do the right things moving forward in order to at least semi-sustain whatever success you might have. If he's not good enough, you don't have to worry about what it would cost him in arbitration. If he's that good, extend him. But Dan Connolly says he's to understand it's not about Super 2. None of this works. And I'm honestly beyond frustrated by it. I'm infuriated is the wrong way to describe it. I'm not infuriated because, again, I'll sleep fine tonight. It won't bother me. But it's so nonsensical. And the lack of information is so puzzling. I don't even know what to say. I so badly want to give Mike Elias and this regime the benefit of the doubt. And it might not matter whenever Adley Rutschman gets here if he proves to be the player that we think he's going to be. As I said before, we'll probably forget about this. But I don't get it. And it would just be nice to get any amount of clarification whatsoever. The Orioles indeed open up a 3-game set against the Rays tonight here in Baltimore. We're assuming that it will not be Adley Rutschman in the lineup. Something called Jalen Beeks, which I've never heard of, will pitch against Tyler Wells, Game 1 of tonight's series at 7 o'clock. They did announce the starting pitchers for the rest of the weekend, so they're not in any the scenario that Paul's talked about where like Grayson Rodriguez will pitch on Sunday. They're not leaving any ambiguity that that's something that they're thinking about doing. They have announced that Spencer Watkins will make the start, which again doesn't mean that, like, in the world where Kevin Garnett is right and anything's possible, but they typically, if they are considering at all something else, they'll just not announce the starter for that day. And they have announced that Spencer Watkins will make his next start. All right, joining us now, let's talk a little bit more about what's been going on down at Norfolk and various stops, Charlotte, Nashville, last couple of weeks. Joining us now, he is the play-by-play voice of the Norfolk Tides. He is Mr. Pete Michaud, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Pete, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's good to chat with you, man. Thank you so much for taking some time for us this morning.
My pleasure, Glenn.
It is, as you imagine, we're a little puzzled, right? We definitely thought that we were going to see Adley Rutschman here by now. What have you seen from Adley Rutschman? And as far as, you know, I know you don't, believe it or not, I don't think that Mike Elias is going to let you make the decision, right? Although, correct me if I'm wrong, Pete. If you've gotten that word, you've been tapped on the shoulder, hey, I'll let you make the call. Do you see a guy right now that you say, that guy's ready for the major leagues?
Well, Glenn, number one, you are correct in that Mike Elias is not allowing me to make any decisions. Frankly,
real
I should,
shame. You're right.
But I'm not making those decisions. As for Adley Rutschman, we all know what talent he has, and he is going to be, I believe, a tremendous major league player. What I have seen from him in the, 12, 13, 14 games he has played since joining us is that he struggled somewhat offensively, was not swinging the bat as well as we had seen last year when he played the last third of the season with Norfolk and hit over 300. He has started to swing the bat much better here in the last 3 or 4 games, making much better contact. It's an interesting dilemma, and I'm certainly with you. From everything that I've been reading on social media, I was betting the ranch that Adley probably would have been gone by now. But, of course, that's all speculation, and, the people in the media and the fans don't have any more insight into what, Mike Elias is going to do than anybody else. Obviously, he is still here. He has caught the last 3 games in a row, 4 catching assignments in the last 5 days with 1 off day in there. So certainly getting a lot of work behind the plate in the lineup offensively every day. So, the question is, at what point should he come up, dependent upon how he's playing? And that's an interesting discussion, one that I actually had yesterday with Matt Blood, who is the Orioles Director of Player Development. And I said, when you've got a guy like Adley, and we know that Mike Elias said, after spring training that were it not for the injury, Adley was probably on track to make the big league club out of camp this year.
Right.
Then you get a guy coming back off the tricep injury, certainly not having had a full spring training and needing work, needing to see pitches, needing to take swings, gets off to maybe a little bit of a slower offensive start than you might like to see. And the question has to be asked, do you go ahead and bring him up, even if he's slumping a little bit offensively because he's Adley Rutschman, or do you leave him for a little longer than you might have anticipated in the hopes that he's on a hot streak before you bring him up? And, that's a question that I can't answer, but one that's very interesting to pose.
Pete, you bring that up. It's a question that we've talked about a lot over the last week or so. And I just wonder how you juxtapose it with the fact that it's not like we are fearful that Adley is overmatched by pitching at that level, because you just saw him at the end of last season come up and hit quite well against pitching at that level. So when he was struggling, did you sense that it was injury related at all? Did you sense that he was just a little bit slow, anything like that?
No, I don't think it was injury related at all. I just think that, players, even the very best of players, have moments, have days, have weeks where, they're just, not seeing the ball terribly well, not making great contact. Maybe Adley was kind of going through that a little bit. Maybe it's because he hadn't seen a whole lot of pitches, because of the lack of a spring and not having played early in the year. I don't think it was anything at all injury related. Physically, he seems to be perfectly fine, says he's perfectly fine. So in terms of the injury, I think that's the thing of the past. I think it's just a matter of him, getting into a groove. And I've seen that here the last couple of days. Looks like he's starting to hit the ball much more solidly. In fact, in contrast to when he first joined Norfolk, and he got a couple of cheap base hits, routine ground balls that were going through the infield. Now it's kind of gone the other way over the last 3 or 4 nights, where he's actually making some outs, but hitting the ball really hard. He hit a rope last night into left field, but he hit it right at the left fielder for an out. I think it was the night before that. He hit an absolute, BB on a string, but right to the shortstop for a line out. So starting to see those good at-bats, and unless you're watching the games and seeing those swings, you might just see, Adley made another out. But, when you see him hitting the ball hard like that, he's kind of turning it around and he's starting to find a groove.
He is Pete Michaud, the play-by-play voice of the Tides, and he's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio. Pete, as far as catching, again, anything that you've noticed that there's been any amount of labor in terms of this being the longest stretch that we've seen, or at least the most consistent stretch that we've seen of him catch since coming back from the injury?
No, he looks perfectly fine. He has made, I think 2 throwing errors here in the last couple of days, and that kind of jumps out at you just because, he is so good defensively. He's normally so accurate with his throws. In fact, he was actually awarded at Harbor Park a couple of days ago his 2021 Rawlings Minor League Gold Glove Award, and then promptly made a throwing error in the game that night, which really kind of jumped out at me. But, he physically looks fine. The arm looks fine. The arm strength is there, moving well behind the plate. He's very good at blocking pitches and really helping his pitchers out, to save wild pitches and pass balls. So, again, I don't see anything physically that would raise any red flags at all with Adley behind the plate.
As far as what he's done, some of the intangible stuff. And, Pete, this goes back to the time that you spent around him last season as well. We wrote a cover story at Pressbox this month, and Luke Jackson dove into the idea that when he arrives, despite being a rookie, it's in his nature to kind of be a leader and just to be that guy, despite the fact that he will be on day one playing his first Major League Baseball game. It's just sort of crazy thought that a guy like that would be a team leader, but that's what we've grown to know of Adley Rutschman. There are people that would say, hey, the fear of bringing someone up that's struggling is that they might be overwhelmed when they get to the major leagues. But everything that we know about Adley Rutschman would seem to say mentally it is hard to rattle this guy. The time that you spent around him, would you tend to agree with that?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. You look at Adley's history and, the numbers that he put up at Oregon State. He's obviously accustomed to the limelight. He's accustomed to attention. He's accustomed to being a guy that is, put into pressure moments, and he has historically responded to them. So I don't think that phases him whatsoever. I think like any young player, he may defer a bit somewhat to some of the older guys that have been around, even a guy like a Trey Mancini,
right? Even
though Trey is not an old guy, but he has a couple of years under his belt now at the big league level. So I don't think Adley's going to go in and, start, making demands and telling everybody what to do, but when the moment arises and the situation is there, especially when it comes to working with the pitching staff, Adley is such a smart ball player, understands the game from behind the plate, as so many good catchers do, because you see the game out in front of you and you really have to have a feel for what's going on. And I think it's the fact that, it's not like Adley feels like he wants to take over and wants to make demands and wants to be the leader. It just kind of comes naturally to him. It's a comfortable situation for him, and his teammates respond to him for that.
All right, let's talk about a couple of other guys, Pete. Let's talk about Grayson Rodriguez because, boy, I know he's much younger than Adley, and I know it's not a rush, but you're starting to get the sense of what more does he have to prove at this point, right?
Yeah, I don't think he has to prove anything else. He has been outstanding with this ball club. He had 2, I wouldn't call them bad outings, but I would call them mediocre games on the last road trip down in Gwinnett, where he got hit kind of hard in the first and second innings of a couple of games and didn't look at his very best. but it kind of was like water off a duck's back. He rebounded pretty nicely in Nashville with a good showing, and then had the dominant showing a couple of days ago here in Charlotte, where he struck out 11. He did walk 3 in that game, so his control was not perfect, but he was still 95 on a scale of 0 to 100. So it was still a dominating effort. He's a guy who very easily throws 94, 95. It makes it look like he's not even trying. And when he wants to ramp it up, 97, 98. We've seen him touch 100 on a couple of occasions. So I don't think he has to prove anything else. I think it's just a matter of, giving the kid an opportunity, to get even more comfortable. He only has 37 1/3 innings of AAA experience in his life. He's only 22 years old. I don't see the need, to rush him. It's, you look back, and obviously you guys have followed the Orioles for a long time. You look back to the prior regime before Mike Elias came in, and it seemed like time and time again, they were pushing guys up so quickly. And I know a lot of organizations, especially when they're losing, feel the pressure to do that, especially from the fans and the media. And you bring a guy up, maybe when he's not quite ready, or putting him into a situation where maybe he could, be a little more comfortable, and, it works as a negative against him. So why make that mistake with Grayson at his age and with the little time he's had at this level? Even if it's a matter of just giving him a half a season at AAA.
Sure.
I'm not sure if I understand, those demanding that he be called up after, just it's been 6 or 7 games here at AAA.
No, I look, I actually agree with you, Pete. It's not. I don't think there needs to be a rush with Grayson Rodriguez. I don't think there needs to be whatsoever. He's very young, and continue to get him firing away. And but I mean, like, we're at the point though where the pitch count is up. Like I think Paul told me it was damn near 90 pitches the last time out, right, with Grayson Rodriguez?
Yeah, I think it was 87.
87.
Yeah.
87.
Yeah. I mean, he's clearly getting to the point where, like, that's not an issue any longer. He's getting to the third time around through an order, right?
Right. And if we look at, if come August and September, we look back at Grayson Rodriguez, and let's just say, for example, he gets called up in, late June or early July, will that have been waiting too long? That's still only half a season.
Right.
So I don't really think even waiting to that point to give him a half a year at AAA, I don't think that's waiting too long at all. So, I have no issue at all with the way they're handling Grayson, and, just let him continue to dominate here, get more comfortable, continue to see more hitters that have had big league time and a lot of AAA experience. That will just continue to benefit him.
I know it's only been a little bit, but give me your thoughts on what you've seen so far in those first 2 starts from DL Hall.
Electric arm. A guy who just has such a smooth motion. He's got that high leg kick. The ball just seems to explode out of his hand. He reminds me a lot of Grayson, that at times you can see when he has his stuff and when he is commanding the zone, looks almost unhittable. But obviously, here's a guy, as you know, that, was shut down last year with the injury. They're bringing him along, understandably, at a very slow and a very cautious rate. Let's build up that pitch count. Let's give him some experience. Of course, he's got even less at this level than Grayson Rodriguez. But another guy who, I think has an opportunity, to be a phenomenal, upper end of the starting pitching rotation kind of guy.
And then there's a guy that, wasn't in that first group of prospects, but kind of in that next group that we had been thinking about. And, the numbers have not been good so far this season. What's been going on with Kyle Stowers, Pete?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know Kyle is a guy that is high on the radar. I know that Mike Elias has been quoted as saying, that he feels as if Kyle is right on the cusp of making it to the big league level. He's been a little erratic this year offensively. He'll have 2 or 3 games in a row where he'll hit the ball extremely well. I know he just had back-to-back games with home runs here a couple of days ago, but then he'll have a night where, he'll strike out swinging 3 times and hit a couple of weak ground balls. So he's a little inconsistent right now. There's obviously a lot of talent there. I think he's a guy who has a chance to make it and make an impact in Baltimore. But right now that average has kind of been, hovering right around the 200 level now for a couple of weeks. He had the great start and then really kind of cooled off like a lot of guys on this team did, and has just not really gotten into a groove where he's hitting the ball hard, for a couple of weeks in a row, and that's what we're waiting to see.
All right, we'll give you this one. Give me the one guy that maybe we're not talking about that you would say, hey, from what I've seen so far this season, this is a guy that should be way more on everybody's radar at this point.
Well, I've got two for you.
Okay.
A position player and a pitcher.
All right.
Position player would be Robert Newstrom.
Yeah, he can
He's
launch
a young
it,
guy
right?
who just throughout his career, you go back and look at him even in high school, he got basically no attention from D1 schools. Ended up, kind of walking on without a scholarship at Iowa. Eventually became a Big Ten player there. I think he's, way down at the prospect list, 38 or something like that. He's not one of those top 10 or top 20 kind of guys. And, I'm not saying he's going to be a major league star, but here's a guy who I think, has an opportunity, to be a starting player at the big league level. He swings a good bat. He's got a little bit of pop. He kind of hits the ball all over the place. I look back to Trey Mancini when Trey was playing with the Tides. I mean, Trey Mancini was not regarded as a top 10 prospect kind of guy.
Not at all, yeah.
And I remember watching Trey thinking, okay, he's a nice, solid ball player. I think maybe Trey, could maybe make the big leagues. I wasn't thinking he could become an all-star at the big league level. And I kind of think Robert Newstrom's the same kind of guy. Whether he can become a starter at the big league level, maybe he's a bench guy, I'm not sure, but I think he's somebody that, we certainly have to continue to pay attention to. On the pitching staff, Cole Huvela has been phenomenal out of the bullpen. Right-hander, they got him from the Rangers as a Rule 5 minor league selection, and he's a guy who goes out there and, he may not dazzle you by throwing, 97 miles an hour, but he's smart. He just gets guys out. And he's a guy who I think if he continues pitching the way that he has been, is somebody that the Orioles at least need to give a look to, because he and Nick Vespi were kind of the back end 8th and 9th inning guys out of that bullpen for the Tides this year. Of course, Nick just got the call up a couple of days ago. And I think Cole is a guy that, if he keeps pitching the way he is, at least you've got to give an opportunity to him at the big league level to see what he can do against pitchers at that level.
Tides are back home next week for 6 against Gwinnett starting on Tuesday night. At Tides Radio Voice is how you follow Pete Michaud on Twitter. Pete, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you taking the time for us this morning. Enjoy your weekend down in Charlotte. Would love to catch up with you again down the road, all right?
Always my pleasure, Glenn, anytime.
Thank you, sir. Pete Michaud with us here on GCR, play-by-play voice of the Norfolk Tides. Checking in with some thoughts. And again, nothing in there that makes you say, well, here's why Adley Rutschman definitely shouldn't be here right now. The eternal argument of, do you want to call a guy up while he's struggling? I just, uniquely with this guy, you can't get me to get that to matter. You just can't get me to think that that's relevant with Adley Rutschman. I would feel differently about other players.
I think if he's struggling, whether he's struggling at the minors or the majors, he's going to break out of it probably at the same time.
I mean, baseball players go through rough stretches.
Exactly.
Baseball players go through a week where they're just not hitting.
Look how Cedric started the season.
Yeah, this happens. This is part of the game. Every baseball player goes through a week where they just don't hit. If the concern was that, dude, we're really worried that he hasn't graduated yet, that he hasn't proven that he has mastered this level in order to move on, that'd be a different conversation. But again, that would conflate with the story that you were going to have him here on opening day and would require you to ignore everything that he did while he was at AAA a year ago.
Something that just popped into my head, maybe because in college and in the minor leagues, generally the manager calls the pitches. Maybe they're giving him an opportunity to call games and see how he handles that. That's the only other thing that I could think of.
I mean, I would think that would have been something that somebody would have pointed out at some point. Like, all these things Dan Connolly has written. I would think that at some point somebody would have said, hey, by the way, like this is that would be a very simple thing when your fan base is losing their minds to come back and say, hey, it's one thing that, like, we just want him to spend a little bit more time doing. And again, if that was the case, why would he have been on the roster on opening day? We keep coming back to, like, these two things don't equate.
Well, if he would have been on the roster on opening day, because he would have had an entire spring training to do that.
But they wouldn't have had an entire spring. We're only talking about another, like, week and a half, 2 weeks, because spring training started so late.
I mean, but he
Like-
had 3 weeks in spring training, just like he's had 3 weeks down at the minor league level.
Well, it's been 4 weeks now at this point. It's been
Yeah, that's true.
a week in Aberdeen, a week in Bowie, 2 weeks in Norfolk,
True.
and whatever more it's gonna be. Like these things just don't line up. You can't make it all line up. Which is why the conspiracy theory and the Super 2 fear lingers, because you can't make these things line up. Now, their answer might be, hey, look, in a perfect world, we would have been away this week and home next week. And so Adley would have gotten a little bit more time to get to catching 4 out of 5 days. And once we were at that point, that was really the biggest thing for us. And ideally, once he did that this week, we call him up next week and he starts at home. But we're on the road next week. And so that complicates things.
Mhm.
I would still go back to why did he need to ramp up to all that catching in the minors? I would still ask that question. I don't understand that. I don't understand why it is that Tyler Nevin needed to get more time at first base instead of having Adley Rutschman come up and letting him DH and having Trey Mancini play first base. I don't understand that.
Right.
You're not going to make me understand that.
Now, I'll tell you, I trust Rockabacco and Dan Connolly implicitly when it comes to the Orioles. If they both say he's not precluded from being called up on the road, then I think it's a very real possibility.
I mean, it has to be a possibility, but that goes back. I'm trying to explain the way of describing this. Every time we say this, of course it's possible. It's just insane.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
you can anything is possible. It's possible. It could wait until September, right? Like anything is possible. It's just nuts. If they call him up on the road, they call him up on the road. And the argument being, at some point, why continue to have these guys catch when you have the option of Adley Rutschman? Like, you can make that argument. But this does go back to the leadership of the organization and someone stepping in and saying, hey, Mike. Because Mike Elias might say, I just don't care about the business side of this. I care about what's best for the baseball team. And what was best for the baseball team was Adley Rutschman catching 4 days out of 5, 5 days out of 6, whatever we wanted it to be, before we call him up. He's done that. It's time to call him up. But somebody in there has got to say, what are we doing? We have to work together on this stuff. And again, it's one thing if you're competitive. It's one thing if you're in the throes of a playoff race and you have a catcher get hurt. If last year they had been competing for a spot, and I don't even remember who was catching at this point last year. Jesus Christ.
Severino.
Thank you, Severino. It was Severino. If Severino gets hurt and you're competing for a playoff spot and you say, the hell with it, we need somebody to catch, this is the guy, bring him up, and somebody says, well, you're really going to bring him up? We're in Toronto this weekend. We're trying to win.
Mm-hmm.
The hell with everything else. Winning is what matters. Somebody within the organization's got to have the ability to step in and say, yo, Chief. No. We all know what's going on here. You don't get to say that what's best for the baseball team is definitely more important than what's best for the business right now. Because, hello, the baseball team is irrelevant. I said it's unfair to say irrelevant. The baseball team is not what matters here. I don't know. I don't know. I'm at the point where I almost don't even want to talk about it anymore.
It's mind-numbing.
It's infuriating. Every day that goes by, it's just infuriating that we're still left this far in the dark about the most important thing that has happened to the Baltimore Orioles since 2016. It just makes my skin kind of curl. Just get to the point. Roll another joint. Turn the radio on. Never mind. It's a different thing. I'm sick of continuing to have the conversation and thinking that at some point somebody can make it make sense to me. Because I am convinced you cannot make it make sense. There's nothing you can do that can make it make sense. Short of if somebody just says, hey, by the way, you're not going to believe this, Adley didn't want to come up right now. Like, that's the only thing at this point.
I'm not quite right, guys.
Well, no, like he just said, like, my family can't be there for this week. I would rather it be when my family could be there. Mm-hmm. And you were just kind of capitulating to Adley at that point and saying, now I don't have any reason to think that's the case. But that's about the only thing at this point.
What
that
in their right mind
if you would tell me, I mean, again, if it doesn't really matter all that much one way or the other, like, I could see there just being a more ideal, like, hey, because of their jobs, they literally cannot fly into Baltimore this week. But
hey, son, we got a cookout this week.
But they have jobs. People still have jobs, Paul.
No, but there's extenuate.
I assure you,
you
say that. I don't. Adley's mom is a teacher. I don't know what Adley's dad does. I don't remember what he does. He's a coach. I know, but I don't know if he does anything else. Let's just say they have a pretty critical playoff game or something like that, right? And I have no reason to think this is the case. But in the world where it is, I don't think it's insane that if Adley Rutschman personally said, hey, look, I am looking at this date as the date that really makes a lot of sense to me because it's the best date for me to organize my family coming in. Would you guys be willing to work with me? Considering the team's not very good, there would be reason for the folks in the decision-making department to say, yeah, bud, we can work with you on that. We can hold this off for another week, and we can do it then if that gives your family a better opportunity of all coming in for the game. I mean, I do remember when we talked to Adley's mom on Mother's Day, her saying something like, I'm hoping to be there. And I wonder if like part of that was just not knowing, and part of that was like, we have some things going on here that we got to deal with, and we just don't know if we can make it. And I just I don't know anything, and as crazy as it sounds, when I try to find something that would make it make sense, that's what I keep coming back to. Make it make sense. This is about the only thing left on the list. But if that were the case, again, why wouldn't you come out and tell everybody? Mm-hmm. Just say, hey, Adley wants his family to be there, and that's the date that they circled, and we're going to have a big celebration on that day with Adley's family for him being here. That would be a wonderful thing for you to come out and put everybody's minds at ease. Oh, we get it now. You're doing a favor for Adley. You're setting things up. That's that's the exact opposite of fighting over Super 2 status. It's you working with the player that we think is going to be the centerpiece of all of this and the guy that you might want to try to extend at some point. That would be the exact none of it. You can't make it make sense. You can't make it make sense. We come back in. I want to talk about Sam Cooke a little bit. As his retirement did indeed become official yesterday. We kind of had a feeling that was the case. Today's show brought to you by your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Make the most out of every day in a Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models, a RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today. Glenn Clark Radio.
Hey, O's fans, break out the orange and black to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Watch the O's take on the Tampa Bay Rays May 20th through the 22nd. Get to the yard early on May 20th when the first 10,000 fans 15 and over will receive a 30th anniversary tumbler presented by Masson. A variety of ticket options are available, including the Orioles Flexible Ticket Bank, Kids Cheer Free, and more. Visit Orioles.com/tickets to find a ticket option that's right for you.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Luke Jackson profiles Orioles catcher Adley Rutschman, diving into where his passion for baseball and for catching comes from and how he uses that passion to elevate those around him in the Orioles organization. Also inside, Bo Smolka takes a look at how the Ravens' 2021 draft picks can make progress in year 2, and Glenn Clark offers a very unique tribute to former rival Mike Krzyzewski that all Maryland fans can appreciate. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
That first sip, that first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Answering Baltimore's calls for help, running in when others run away, working together toward one shared vision for a thriving city. That's your Baltimore Police. But the department needs more good people, people like you. Join a proud new generation of Baltimore Police and make an active difference in your community. Start with competitive wages and excellent benefits on day one. Join for good at bpdrecruit.org.
Sports betting has come to Maryland, and we're ready to help you win some money. Tune in for Simply the Bets with Glenn Clark and Paul Valley every Tuesday morning at 11:40. FanDuel Sportsbook GM Bruce Billick and VSiN's Aaron Oster join the guys every week to give you all of the info you need and even a few winners. So come win some money with us on Simply the Bets every Tuesday at 11:40 a.m. Brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio. Watch at YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline.
Baseball is back, and so is the spring seasonal menu at Glory Days Grill. Start with the opener, flash-fried pork belly with our popular Korean No. 2 sauce, and take a bite out of the Crunch Burger, topped with home run sauce, white American cheese, and house-made chips. It also features irresistible options like a baseball-cut sirloin with blue cheese, grilled shrimp with garlic butter, and a strawberry salmon salad. And then there's the closer, the Cracker Jack Sundae with a waffle, ice cream, and Cracker Jack. This menu will be gone at your neighborhood Glory Days Grill. GloryDaysGrill.com to find out more. Great food, good sports.
We can't imagine why you'd want to, but you can watch GCR live. It's at Facebook.com/PressBoxSports. And try to guess whether these guys are wearing any pants.
If you missed either Stan the Fan shows this week, on Monday they had a special show kind of talking everything Bowie Bay Sox with Phil Rye and Adam Pohl. And then on Wednesday, he and Gary Stein caught up with new Towson Athletic Director Stephen Eigenbrot. Those shows available. Facebook.com/PressBoxSports. Click on the videos tab, PressBoxOnline.com/video, or YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline. I think a lot of people kind of realized that yesterday's press conference was going to be about Sam Cook's retirement. A couple of things that I want to say about it. One, this goes back to when the weekend of the draft, I said, after I heard the Ravens' response to the question about drafting a punter, I kind of said, hey, that's a bit of a cop-out. And I said the one caveat being, like, if they know that Sam Cook is going to retire and they just don't want to steal his thunder, then I think it's a reasonable way that they just kind of didn't want to talk about it during the draft weekend. I am to understand they didn't know that Sam Cook was going to retire.
That's the vibe I got from the press conference.
Yeah, I mean, that was the vibe that was put off. And again, the vibe that was put off by Sam Cook is like very much he still thinks he can do this. I haven't talked to Sam yet. I'm sure I will at some point in the next week. Just give these guys some time. And it's a little bit different because he is going to move into a coaching role, and so he is still kind of with the Ravens. The truth is that this does almost create a best of both worlds scenario. And I say that because they clearly think this kid, Jordan Stout, can punt. Enough so that they were willing to make a decision like this. If they get to a point in the season and he's hurting them, their backup plan is literally in the building. And that becomes awkward because you just did this like lavish retirement ceremony for Sam Cook, which I'm going to guess very few punters have ever experienced something like this. And Sam, I don't think, makes this decision without being confident that he's actually retired. But I think the unspoken part of this is that they're buying themselves a backup plan, which is if they get through 8 weeks of the season and for whatever reason this kid is just a disaster and is not ready for the NFL level, they have a punter in the building. And they can say, we're going to worry about this another day. We'll let this guy finish out the year, if he's willing to, and that will become a question at that point. And I think that's not something that you'll ever get Sam to say on the record because it feels like you're kind of cutting off the legs of the kid that's about to become the punter. But I would think that behind the scenes, they would have at least had that conversation. Hey, man, we're not going to talk about this, but we just want to know. despite all this, if we get to a point where we had to, could you punt for us? I also wonder if allowing him to stay within the organization in any kind of capacity as this sort of personal mentor to Jordan Stout is the individual reason why Sam decided that he would prefer to retire than punt somewhere else. Sam's got a big family. We've talked about that a lot over the years. The idea that he can still be at home with the kids, that he doesn't have to go live in Indianapolis or Denver or Minnesota, wherever it would be, while the rest of the family stays here, or uproot an entire family for like 1 year of punting somewhere else. I think that's quite desirable. So kind of a neat way, best of both worlds scenario that it works out, but you still need someone who punts next year. I mean, we don't think about it the way that we think about other things. We can't measure it quite the same way. Like, when your kicker doesn't work out. When the Buccaneers used that high of a pick on Roberto Aguayo and he couldn't make an effing kick, they knew they had effed up. And they had to fix it quickly. It's not quite as definable when it comes to your punter, because the likelihood is that you're not going to have the most refined punter on day one of their NFL career. So when do you bail on it, or how do you know it's definitely not working? That's a more complicated question. With the kicker, because they're not making a kick. And the Ravens bailed on Stephen Ashkat, and he wasn't even all that bad. He just missed one really critical kick in Minnesota, and they said, sorry, man, this could be too important. This is the difference in winning and losing games. So we got to go with the guy that we know will never lose us a game, and they hired Billy Cundiff, and it worked out perfectly.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
Never lost a game. The funny part being Billy Cundiff was actually quite good for the most part during his time as a Ravens kicker.
I'm glad that you mentioned the whole family aspect, because I was sitting there and I'm listening to this press conference yesterday, and my thought process is this guy clearly thinks he can still do it, and he clearly would still like to play but is it the fact that he just doesn't want to leave Baltimore?
No, I just think that it's an awkward spot when the idea is, for one, Sam's made a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have to do it any longer. He's won a Super Bowl. He's going to be in the insanity of a punter being in a team's ring of honor, or receiving the highest honor that a team can give. I know that Brian Billick was on here yesterday making the argument for Sam Cook to get into Canton. And by the way, there is an argument. It's just not going to happen.
Are there any punters?
Yeah, Ray Guy. Ray Guy's in the Hall of Fame, but that's the list. It's just so, and Ray Guy had to wait like 100 years in order to get in. It's so ungodly difficult for a punter to get into the Hall of Fame. It's difficult for a kicker to get in the Hall of Fame. But we think there are two that are coming after, like Morton Anderson already got in. Jan Stenerud's been in. We think that both Vinatieri and Justin Tucker are going to get in future years. Punters, it's so bloody difficult. And for whatever stupid reason, Sam Cook did not get the individual accolades that make it overwhelming and broad for people who aren't paying attention. You're asking a room full of people that weren't watching every Ravens game. And they look back and they say, the guy was a Pro Bowler once. That you think a one-time Pro Bowler is a guy that's going to be in the Hall of Fame?
Like Nick Markakis. Where people are saying if he plays 6 more years,
yeah, you could get but the 3,000 hits thing would still be that would outweigh.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not a punter. like you got it.
He's a right fielder.
I understand that, but he plays every day. Like, he's a regular. Yeah. A punter is a punter, no matter how good you are. Again, the greatest punter of all time. It's hard as hell to get into the Hall of Fame. It's convincing a group of people that didn't watch every game that a punter is a Hall of Famer that, again, made one Pro Bowl is going to be near impossible. And that is a failure because he didn't receive more accolades. Like, he was only a one-time All-Pro as well. It's not just that you say, hey, this is about fan vote. Part of the problem is nobody is watching punting. And nobody saw what Sam Cook was doing for punting And the way that we viewed punting for the most part, even going into this draft, everybody was talking about the kid from San Diego State, the punt god, because he could boom the ball 90 yards. Because the thing that we notice about punting is when you kick the ball really far, we don't have the advanced stats and the metrics to say, no, this guy is actually the best punter because he comes up with the best punt in each circumstance that he's in. And that's what Sam Cook did. He revolutionized the concept of punting, which is the best argument for him maybe to one day be considered for the Hall of Fame as more punters come along and say, I'm doing what Sam Cook did. And they use his name in how the entire vocation has changed. That maybe 15 years down the road, somebody in that room is like, dude, have you noticed that everybody talks about Sam Cook? In the way that Don Coryell was not the greatest coach of all time, but revolutionized football with Air Coryell, and it made the argument for him to maybe be worthy of the Hall of Fame. Again, it's trickier because we're talking about punting. But the more these punters say, hey, Sam Cook was the guy. Sam Cook was the reason I punt the way that I do. Sam Cook is what inspired me to learn different ways to punt. The more you hear that from younger punters, the better chances of his name coming up. But it's still extraordinarily unlikely. He was a one-time All-Pro. Just, it ain't going to happen no matter how deserving he might be. But we all know from being in here in Baltimore just how effing good Sam Cook is and has been. And, you know, how insane and fortunate this does not happen in most organizations. In most organizations, they're going through punters every couple of years. And there's a point at which during the season you have to switch punters in the middle of the season because it's such a mess.
The Ravens have had a long line of good. I think they've only had 3 punters.
No, they've had
right?
4, but like you can say there are various levels of good. Kyle Richardson, Dave Zastido were fine. They were fine. This guy, it's not like this is not Matt Stover to Justin Tucker. This guy was vastly better than all of the other punters that have been in Baltimore. And they had fine punters. Montgomery, Zastidil, Kyle Richardson won the first Super Bowl. They had fine punters. This guy's vastly better. And for fairness, Justin Tucker's vastly better than Matt Stover, too. But Matt Stover was better at his job than those guys were at their jobs. It's a shame because it's punting that it wasn't more widely known how good Sam Cook was. It's a shame that it took, I want to say it was Van Valkenburg's story in ESPN, the magazine, and maybe it was somebody else. I don't remember it was an ESPN story, but I think it was Kevin, that really broke down just how crazy it was and how different what Sam Cook was doing than any other punter in the game. And it was funny because when we talked to Jordan Stout the morning after the draft, he was talking about the various different punts that he has. And that is a direct reflection on Sam Cook. Sam Cook brought the golf bag to punting. I kick this punt in this circumstance. I do this punt in this circumstance. In the past, it was I maybe put a little more or a little less air in it, and I might kick to a certain direction. That was the extent of the concept of punting. Sam Cook had 30-some different punts. 30-some different pitches in his arsenal to go to, given the circumstance. He completely revolutionized the concept. It's not sexy. We don't score fantasy points for it unless you play in Patrick Stevens' Fantasy Punter League, which I've never had the balls to join, but I've always thought about, and that's a real thing that really exists.
Wow.
Sam Cook's been unbelievable. He's accomplished everything he needs to accomplish. Him saying, hey, look, man, I'd rather just be here at this point. I can be cool with the career that I've had. I'd rather just be here and be with my family as they're running around playing sports, and I get the chance to go to more games. He's going to be 40 years old. He's a man who's approaching 40 years old himself. I get it. I completely get it. I wish I could be in the same place. I might be able to retire when I'm dead. So happy, very happy for Sam. And it unfortunately, on a national scale, you know, they don't even know how to pronounce the man's name. They'll call him Sam Koch or whatever. Like nationally, it registers nothing because it's a punter. I mean, that's just the reality of it. No, but it's a punter. Who cares? But here locally, we know. We understand. At least with kicking, it counts for fantasy football, and you can personally win games. Sam Cook has won the Ravens games. I've talked about it. There have been days where he has been the best playmaker they had. A little bit less of that in recent years because the offense got much better, but there have been those days during the course of his tenure. Tremendous career. What a run, and hopefully now some of that will rub off, and that it does. It puts Jordan Stout under a microscope. This is, again, a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl. You're going all in. You're going all in with an important part of your team on saying we trust this guy. And it worked with Justin Tucker once upon a time. You went with a rookie kicker, and you had a Super Bowl win to show for it. You had a guy that was ready to go deliver a massive kick in Denver with the game on the line in frigid weather to beat Peyton Manning.
Well, when you got ice in your veins, you don't get it.
I hear you, but they didn't know that was the case when they decided to go. They knew he was talented. They knew, but people forget just how difficult and how agonizing the decision was for them between Billy Cundiff and Justin Tucker. They were committed to Billy Cundiff being the guy. It's why they didn't draft a kicker. They signed a kicker after the draft to say, hey, let's bring somebody in to push Billy, to try to help him get better. They were committed to Billy Cundiff still being their kicker the following year. This is not that. There's no competition. They're committed to the rookie being the punter. Bold. I mean, it's bold. It's an important part of the game. They truly believe this guy's special. And I hope they're right. Sure, I hear you. They have prioritized it in a way that very few organizations have ever prioritized special teams. How much of that is just a run of good luck versus them having...
It's 10 years.
It's when you talk specifically about but that's because they ran into one kicker. You know what I mean? Like, they also tried Steve Hauschka.
And Graham Gano.
Well, they never put him. Graham Gano was never the regular season kicker.
Oh, he didn't kick it?
And he ended up, but he ended up being good in Carolina for years.
Correct. When the argument has always been for other teams, but the Kari Vedvik wasn't. You know what I mean? Like Wade Ritchie was far more than 10 years ago. And
I remember he kicked the longest kick in Ravens history.
Yes.
They did what they had to do with Vedvik. They got a pick out of him.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, like, this might be nothing more than good luck that they happened to find Justin Tucker.
Or maybe only the Ravens.
And Justin Tucker could have been someone. Justin Tucker could have been a guy that wasn't Justin Tucker. They happened to find the one. I understand the argument that if there's a place to have faith in the Ravens, it's in special teams. I understand that argument wholeheartedly. But, you know, somebody else might have argued if there was a place to have faith in the Ravens, it was middle linebacker. And, you know, middle linebacker became kind of a problem for a few years. C.J. Mosley was good, but not good enough that they wanted to give him a contract. Post C.J. Mosley, they struggled so much they had to go back into the first round to try to find Patrick Queen and hope that that would be the guy. Like, there have been plenty of times where we've said, hey, if there's anywhere to trust, and if it costs you a game earlier in the year because you decided to go full-blown with a rookie punter, there's going to be some second-guessing about it. There's going to be somebody saying, hey, you know, nobody was talking about it, but that kid kind of cost you the game on Sunday. Yikes. That's all I'm saying. I don't have any reason to think that's going to be the case, but it goes under the microscope.
4 years ago.
That was a thing that happened, and we all convinced ourselves that Joe Flacco couldn't play anymore, despite the fact that he literally had beat the Saints that day, and then Justin Tucker missed an extra point, which it's still one of the most befuddling things that's ever happened in the history of football.
I'll never forget the look on his face.
I mean,
like, what?
I mean, we were all exactly as confused as he was. Could not believe. I mean, it was the most insane thing you've ever seen. Of course, Joe Flacco also got hurt, so it was going to be over one way or the other for him. From Dan. Dan says, Glenn, it's interesting the theories you're starting to throw out about Adley Rutschman. I, too, have been starting to wander into almost the bizarro world scenarios at this point. Like, for example, is there any chance that the Orioles want to do a unique giveaway on the night that Adley Rutschman makes his debut and they don't have the T-shirts made yet? I know you're laughing, but remember how many times the Orioles have botched a bobblehead or something along those lines over the years. What was the one? What was the
Kevin Gossman on the Game of Thrones dragon after he'd been traded away?
Well, there was that. I was there. I want to say the first Chris Tillman bobblehead was a night that he had been sent down and he was starting at Norfolk the same night that his bobblehead night was at. If it wasn't Tillman, somebody.
Adley Rutschman is not ready yet.
What? Like he specifically wants a number that someone already has on the team.
No. They're retiring 35 because they know he's going to be that
but
good.
they already want to have it out.
Yes.
In the do they call the plaza something? The retired where all the numbers are out front.
I have no idea.
They're going to build a statue, and that's why.
They're waiting
They're
for it
waiting
to be
for all
ready
that
before
stuff to
Adley
be
Rutschman
ready.
makes his debut. It's a hell of an idea. Don't get me wrong.
It's
a hell of an
idea.
idea. Right? It's a hell of an idea. Yes, that's where we are with guessing in relation to Adley Rutschman, is because we just simply don't know. So we are very much at that point. By the way, today's show also brought to you by the Baltimore Police. Join a proud new generation of Baltimore Police. Make an active difference in your community. Start with competitive wages and excellent benefits on day one. Join for good. BPDrecruit.org. Brian Powell wants to know if there's an update on the lacrosse bet heading into this weekend's games. Brian, I mean, I'm pretty sure Booker's lost. I mean, we said that a couple weeks ago. I'll double check on it, but I'm pretty sure Booker had Duke and he had Notre Dame. Like, Booker barely had anybody make the tournament. I want to say his best hope was Brown, and they're out. So I'm pretty sure that Booker has clinched defeat, but we will double check on that as far as lacrosse bet is concerned, and we will deal with that with Booker because he will have to choose to make a run. And from oh God. Maybe it is allergies. I don't know why they're creeping up again now. It's getting warm. It's going to be real warm tomorrow for Preakness. Yuck. God, thanks a lot for that. Jesus Christ.
90s today, tomorrow. 90s all weekend.
Couldn't have a damn 75-degree day for Preakness. It'd be really effing nice. I'm going to sweat ball. And that's the other thing, too, is because we're sitting in the nice area, she's definitely going to ask me to wear an effing suit. I'm not going to wear the seersucker. I'm not doing that. I will pull that out for special occasions at some point in the future, but I ain't doing it tomorrow. But she will definitely ask me to wear a suit. It's going to be 94 degrees.
Can you wear like one of those suits where the pants are shorts?
I don't think I can pull that off. I don't think I have the gams for that, my friend. I don't think that that's the look for me. And I'm not going to go out and buy. I don't own one like that. I'm not going to go out and buy one today.
Baby.
Oh, just cut off a pair of
baby.
pants and make them. I just know how this is going to go. I know I'm going to get home tonight. She'll be like, "Hey, what are you wearing tomorrow?" And I'm going to say, "I'll wear, a breathable shirt and a pair of slacks, something like that." And she's going to say, "What? No, you have to wear a suit." And I'm going to say, "It's 1,000 degrees." She's like, "Yeah, but I'm wearing a dress because it breathes." I mean, I'll wear a shirt. I'm happy to wear a shirt.
Thank God.
I thought about it a little bit. And at some point, that's the other thing, too. At some point, she's going to get bored, and she's going to say, "Let's go out and look at the infield." And we'll be out there like dopes, the oldest people in the infield, I'll be wearing an effing suit. And I know there'll be other people that will do the same thing, but they'll feel just as stupid as I will.
Well, what about when she starts to complain about how hot she is?
Oh my God, it's all she's going to do. And it's worse because she's going to be drinking all day. Because we're getting there at like 10:30 a.m. because we're sitting in the open bar area and we want to take advantage of how much we had to pay to sit in the open bar area. So she will be passed out by 3 in the afternoon. Now, my plan...
That's 8 hours before the race starts.
The race starts at 7. My plan is to let her sleep for a little while. Just literally treat her like she was a 20-year-old. Just to let her sit. I'll play Wordle. I'll play Hurdle. I'll do all those things on my phone. Let her sleep for a minute. She'll come back to at some point. She gets her second wind, hopefully in time for the Preakness. But I know I have seen this day so many times in my life. This day.
is going to be an utter and she's going to wake up at like 3 in the morning because she's got to go to her own horse barn and do things. She is going to pass out. If we walk outside and she's been day drinking and it's 90 degrees outside, she might pass out in the middle of the track as we're walking to the infield.
Didn't this happen? Didn't you miss a concert because of this?
Oh, that was Jeremy. Jeremy missed the Avett Brothers show because his wife passed out at the Orioles game. There was the rain delay. It was going on forever, and his wife passed out. And it was his birthday, and all he wanted to do was see the Avett Brothers so badly, and she passed out. So that's a thing that occurred. All right, we'll talk more about the Preakness. Donna Brothers from NBC is going to join us next. We will get her thoughts on what to expect tomorrow. Still to come this hour, our buddy Gregg Rosenthal will join us as well. It is a Friday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
Sports fans, is over. The all-new FanDuel Sportsbook is now open at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. This is your chance to win big right in your own backyard. Bet on every sport with self-service kiosks and watch all of the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
The biggest pro wrestling stars today and all time all have one thing in common. You've heard them on Jobbing Out.
Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks.
Thanks for having us, man. Appreciate it.
The great Kurt Angle.
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Matt Riddle.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man.
The champ, Drew McIntyre.
Oh, thank you for having me.
The great Ron Simmons.
Damn.
Keith Lee.
Appreciate you guys having me, man.
Bill Goldberg.
My pleasure.
Charlotte.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mick Foley is with us.
This is the greatest name for a wrestling show I've ever heard.
MJF.
I'm glad you're happy I'm on this show because I'm freaking miserable.
Le champion.
Chris Jericho.
Le champion.
AJ, Aaron, Brandon, and Glenn are talking pro wrestling every week on Jobbing Out. Find it at PressBoxOnline.com/radio, iTunes, and SoundCloud.
Answering Baltimore's calls for help, running in when others run away, working together toward one shared vision for a thriving city. That's your Baltimore Police. But the department needs more good people, people like you. Join a proud new generation of Baltimore Police and make an active difference in your community. Start with competitive wages and excellent benefits on day one. Join for good at bpdrecruit.org.
Stan the Fan here, welcoming back one of my favorite sponsors, the Costas Inn. And everybody around Baltimore knows that the Costas Inn is a great place to go and grab crabs, steaks, salads, soups, whatever's on your mind to eat in person. But did you know that the Costas Inn has upped their game? They are now one of the premier takeout places in Baltimore. Give them a call now to order your food, 410-477-1975. That's the Costas Inn over 4100 North Point Boulevard.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Luke Jackson profiles Orioles catcher Adley Rutschman, diving into where his passion for baseball and for catching comes from and how he uses that passion to elevate those around him in the Orioles organization. Also inside, Bo Smolka takes a look at how the Ravens' 2021 draft picks can make progress in year two, and Glenn Clark offers a very unique tribute to former rival Mike Krzyzewski that all Maryland fans can appreciate. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Stay tuned. Your chance to win $1 million is coming up. Probably not from us. You're listening to Glenn Clark Radio.
All right, back in here on GCR, Friday edition of the program. Today's show is also brought to you by Glory Days Grill. You only have about a week and a half to take advantage of the spring seasonal menu. It goes away at the end of May. What do you say? Get to Glory Days. I'll go back. I'll reworkshop that one. The point is, it's delicious. The opener is the flash-fried pork belly with the Korean No. 2 sauce. And then they don't call it the closer, but they should. It's the Cracker Jack Sundae with the waffle, the ice cream, and the Cracker Jacks, the strawberry salmon salad, the baseball cut sirloin. It's all available right now at your neighborhood Glory Days Grill. Get your order in glorydaysgrill.com. Preakness tomorrow, joining us now from NBC. She is the great Donna Brothers, and she's with us here on GCR. Donna, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you, as always. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Yeah, Glenn, always a pleasure. I love coming to Baltimore and love coming on the show with you.
Well, Donna, let's go back a couple of weeks, right? That was quite the scene after the race. You have a job to do. Take me through how that was unfolding in front of your eyes.
Yeah, it was a little crazy. So, as you know, it's traditional for the outrider to get a hold of the winning horse after all the big races, whether it's the Derby, Preakness, Belmont Stakes, or one of the Breeders' Cup races, and bring him back to the winner's circle. And part of the reason is to bring him back safely, right? Because when that winner comes galloping back in front of the crowd erupts, and it's very easy for the horse to just spook and duck and drop the rider, and so you don't want to have a loose horse on the track. And so the outrider just traditionally gets a hold of the Kentucky Derby winner, and it's very nonchalant.
Right.
It just happens. This time, however, the Kentucky Derby winner decided to savage the outrider and his horse. He bit him repeatedly, in fact. You know, at the time, all I was watching was that the horse was trying to savage the outrider and his horse. I found out later that he did bite the outrider in his arm 3 times and his leg twice, got his horse repeatedly. He ended up with marks on his neck where you could see he really broke the skin.
Jeez.
So it was really, really unusual, not something I've ever seen. I was a jockey for 12 years. I galloped horses in the morning for another 10 or 15 years, and I've just never seen anything like that, just that sort of sustained attack. And so, yes, we decided to abort mission on the post-race interview and just go ahead and let the outrider, once he was able to finally get the horse under control, gallop back to the winner's circle.
You know, obviously we're not going to – we're going to get to the race and the horses that we are going to see. We're not going to see Rich Strike, of course, tomorrow. Did you have any concerns about that specifically after the race? Or, you know, I remember talking to Eric Reed afterwards. He said, nah, this is the horse that thinks he's a fighter, right? Like, what was your reaction as you were watching that?
You mean, did I have concerns if he was going to run in the Preakness?
Just about the horse itself, like that this is not that there's something that's not right about this.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I'll tell you one of the things that I went to Eric Reed's training center a few days after the Kentucky Derby, and I watched the horse train there, and Eric told me that when he got the horse was very intimidated by other horses. And so he started to train him differently. He would put 2 or 3 horses galloping in front of him, and he would make the rider keep Rich Strike behind those horses. And toward the end of the gallop, he would let him pass the horses. And so he taught him to sit behind horses, not be intimidated by them, and then he got to pass them late, and he got apparently too much confidence. And so after the race, when the outrider grabbed him, the way that Eric describes it,
right,
he thinks that, you know, Rich Strike felt like he had just done his job. He'd just passed all the horses, and that's when he's done, and he, you know, gets to go back to his stall and eat some grain. And instead, the outrider grabs a hold of him, and now he's behind the horse again, and so he needs to get past this horse. And so I think, you know, for some reason, it's just one of those things that was just a perfect storm. I think it's also worth noting that when I was at Eric Reed's training center, I did not notice a stable pony there at the farm. And so I don't think he typically, except for in the warm-up going to the gate, is used to being with any kind of a stable pony after a gallop or a work, and a lot of the other horses are.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Donna, you know, how we measure, we know there's a big race coming up tomorrow. There's only 3 of these every year, and so obviously it's huge. But there is the other side of it, which is there's disappointment. There has to be disappointment when you only get 3 of these every year, and the second one already loses a little bit of luster. How do you measure that for the sport itself? The understanding of, hey, it's important to do what's best for the horses versus the disappointment of not having the same amount of excitement this week here in Baltimore as there would be if the Derby winner was running.
Well, Glenn, I'm a pretty hardcore horse racing fan, so it's still very exciting for me. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't a little bit disappointed when I heard that Rich Strike wasn't going, and I honestly thought something must be wrong with him for him not to go. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to go see him train.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with him, and so I understand Eric Reed's philosophy behind why he's not going to do it. You know, he told me, look, there's only been 13 Triple Crown winners, and did I really think my horse was going to win the Derby? No, I thought he was going to run well. And the plan was always, if he ran in the first half of the pack, would run him back 5 weeks later in the Belmont Stakes. And he said, and I feel like if we do that, shorten him up in distance to a distance that's not going to suit him, we take away that second opportunity, the second opportunity for him to get a Grade 1 win this year, which would be the Belmont Stakes. And so I felt like the reasoning was sound. The horse is sound. It will probably make for a more exciting Belmont Stakes, especially if Epicenter were to win the Preakness Stakes.
Yep.
And then we've got the rubber match going into the Belmont Stakes. But for me, the Preakness Stakes is still super exciting. You've got the horse who was in front at the 16th pole, Epicenter, who was the favorite. And you've got the filly who won the Kentucky Oaks. With, Hall of Fame trainer D. Wayne Lucas bringing her in at 86 years of age. There are still so many great stories, and it's still a great race and a great card. And so I'm still excited about it, but I do get that the casual fan is less excited when there's not a Triple Crown on the line.
She is Donna Brothers from NBC. She's with us here on Glenn Clark Radio ahead of the Preakness tomorrow. Donna, with that in mind, what you just said and what Eric told you, your colleague Randy Moss, I know, is one of the louder in the, hey, we need to separate these races. We have to do this. I admittedly am the type that says, we just saw two horses win the Triple Crown. It's supposed to be hard to do this thing. Where are you as that discussion continues about separating these three races maybe a little bit more on the calendar?
Well, Glenn, my colleague Randy Moss has finally worn me down on this
Really?
issue. I'll be honest.
Okay.
Yes. Because I think he makes a really good argument. So I don't think that it would make it easier to win the Triple Crown. In fact, it might make it harder. So one of the points that he brings up is that you have a guy like Todd Pletcher who almost never brings his Kentucky Derby starters to the Preakness Stakes unless the horse won the Kentucky Derby. Other than that, he might bring a couple of new shooters to the Preakness Stakes, but never his Kentucky Derby starters unless they won. And a lot of trainers do that, right? So if you spread those apart and make them 4 weeks apart, let's say first Saturday in May for the Derby, first Saturday in June for the Preakness Stakes, first Saturday in July for the Belmont Stakes, what you have in effect is that you're going to have a tougher race in the Preakness Stakes because you're going to have a lot more of the horses who ran in the Derby who are going to run back in 4 weeks but don't want to run back in 2 weeks. And it makes it a better day of racing for Pimlico in general because you get a lot, there's a lot of stakes races on that weekend card at Churchill Downs. So you get a lot of those horses to come back into races like the Pimlico Special, the Black-Eyed Susan.
Mm-hmm. It's a fair argument, Donna. It's a fair. Maybe this is me being the old man in the room and just sort of saying I don't like change,
honestly,
right?
Honestly, you're in the majority. Yeah. I would say that 70% of people say leave it the way it is. But I think that you have to, sort of be bold if you're going to be great. And I think that the Triple Crown has the potential to be better than it is if we went to every 4 weeks rather than the current schedule.
You mentioned Secret Oath. It is hard not to think about what happened with Mind That Bird, a huge upset in the Kentucky Derby, and then turning around and having an Oaks winner in Rachel Alexandra 2 weeks later in the Preakness. It's hard not to think of the parallels, and I know that the difference now being that the upset winner of the Derby is not going to be running in this race. Is Secret?
It would have been almost identical.
Right,
if,
right.
If
Oh,
in fact
what a
Rich
story!
Strike came back.
Is Secret Oath of that ilk? Is this filly potentially that good?
Well, I'll tell you, when Wayne Lucas was asked that same question, sort of how she compares to some of the great fillies that he's trained, like Winning Colors and Althea and Serena Song, and the list goes on. He said she's going to have to do a little bit more to prove that she belongs in that league. And I feel the same way if you're going to compare her to Rachel Alexandra. She's going to have to do a little bit more. But if she wins the Preakness, she's in that league.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, right, at that point, there's no question that she's in that league.
She's not there yet, though, Glenn, to answer
right,
your question.
I get
that. But
that
doesn't mean she can't win. But in order for her to win, Epicenter has to not run his race.
Okay.
I mean, whoever wins the race has to get past Epicenter to win it.
So let's talk about that. We all know Epicenter is the overwhelming favorite, and we all saw a great run for Epicenter. There's no concern for you at all about the 2-week turnaround for Epicenter. You believe that this horse is going to run just as well on the track tomorrow as the horse ran for the most of the race in Louisville.
I believe in trainer Steve Asmussen. He's in the Hall of Fame at a very young age for a reason. He's the leading trainer in North America by wins all time, and he's only 56 years old. And the immediate question after the Kentucky Derby, the next day, Steve, are you going to run back in the Preakness? And Steve's answer was, we'll see how the horse comes back. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, he's back in the barn. Now what do you think? And he said, no, we'll take him to the track. We'll see how his energy level is. And so he came to the Preakness based on Steve's assessment of him a few days after the race. He didn't immediately commit to the Preakness Stakes. He also didn't immediately rule it out, which some trainers did. But if Steve Asmussen said the horse is doing well, that's good enough for me. And I don't know if you watched our telecast for the Derby. I think I was the only one of our announcers who picked him. I loved him in the Kentucky Derby, so I'm not going to get off of him now.
Oh, and look, it's not like he didn't have a good run. He had a hell of a run in the Kentucky Derby. Like,
Exactly.
I'm with you on that, Donna. So I am, if I want to put Epicenter and Secret Oath up top, who's the shooter that I can throw in? Who's the shooter that you say, this might be the way that maybe you could find some money to be made if I'm putting
okay, if you want to put Epicenter and who up top?
And Secret Oath.
Oh, I see. Well, I mean, the third choice in the program, or I'm sorry, the second choice in the program is early voting,
Right.
according to the morning line odds. And so I guess you've already decided early voting doesn't have a chance.
I'm not saying it's not even really that, Donna. It's more like I'm trying to find a creative way to make some money, and I just really want the other two to be. I don't pretend that I have any idea what's going to happen. Other than and when I was down there, and I'm sure we talked about it. The year that I was down, when I used to do the show from Louisville,